I found a file with the requested content. Would you like me to extract and craft the topic line based on that information? I never expected that a simple night of sneaking into my wife's phone would turn my entire world upside down. I still remember the moment I saw that message, something so casual, yet it cut through me like a knife. Her name, and we'd been married for about 5 years. At first, everything seemed fine, or at least I thought it was. She was a little bitchy sometimes, yeah, but I figured that was just her personality. She was high maintenance, always complaining about money, about me not making enough, about how I wasn't doing enough around the house. Still, I loved her, or at least I thought I did. We had a pretty comfortable life, or so I thought. I had a decent job and she had her part-time gig as a fitness instructor. Money was tight sometimes, but we managed. We had a house, a dog, and 2 cars. Nothing fancy, but it was ours. The signs of trouble, though, started creeping in months ago. She'd get defensive whenever I asked about her phone or her whereabouts. She'd brush me off, change the subject, or tell me I was being paranoid. But I wasn't paranoid, I just knew her too well. The first real sign was the late nights she'd spend out with her friends, often claiming she was just out for drinks. But I'd notice her phone kept buzzing with texts at odd hours, and she'd hide it quickly when I walked into the room. She'd get snippy if I asked who it was. I started paying more attention, and that's when I saw it, the messages. I was just scrolling through her photos one night, killing time, when I saw a message from someone named Jake. It was flirty, suggestive, and clearly not something she'd say to a friend. My stomach dropped. That was the moment I knew I was onto something. I didn't want to jump to conclusions, so I kept quiet, but I kept digging. Over the next few weeks, I noticed her behavior changing even more. She was colder, more distant, and she'd get defensive whenever I brought up plans or money. I caught her lying about small things, like where she was or who she was talking to. And then, I found the receipts hidden in her email confirming what I suspected. She'd been meeting someone, probably Jake, at some fancy bars downtown and spending money like crazy. The betrayal hit me hard. I felt like I'd been punched in the gut. I didn't want to believe it at first. I kept asking myself what I'd done wrong, what I could have done differently. But deep down, I knew this wasn't about me. It was about her. With her bitchy attitude and her constant lies, had been cheating on me for months, maybe longer. I was furious, hurt, and utterly confused about what to do next. I didn't want to confront her right away. I needed a plan, something to catch her in the act or at least make her admit the truth. So I started gathering evidence. I installed a keylogger on her phone, just enough to see her messages without her knowing. I set up a hidden camera in the living room, just in case she brought someone over. I wanted to be sure before I lost my mind completely. I couldn't believe I was doing this, but I also couldn't ignore what I'd discovered. My mind was racing. What if I was wrong? But deep down I knew I was sneaky, manipulative, and she didn't care about my feelings. She was used to lying, used to getting her way, and now I had proof that she was using me for money and sex. The final straw came when I saw her arranging to meet Jake again, this time with a large sum of cash exchanged between them. That was when I realized I needed to do something drastic. I couldn't just sit back and pretend everything was fine. No, I had to confront her, but I also had to be smart about it. I wasn't going to let her walk all over me or keep cheating behind my back. I decided I'd wait until she was out one evening, then I'd confront her face to face with everything I had. That night, I sat on the couch, my heart pounding, clutching the evidence I'd collected. I knew this was going to change everything. I wasn't sure if I was ready for the fallout, but I was tired of living in the dark, of being the fool in my own marriage. I just hoped that when I finally confronted her, it would be the end of the lies, the betrayal, and the emotional torment she'd put me through. I never thought I'd be the guy to catch his wife cheating, but here I was, ready to face whatever was coming. That evening, I waited until left for her yoga class, which she claimed was every Tuesday and Thursday. I knew better, but I played the part. I watched her grab her gym bag, her phone in hand, and head out the door with her usual bitchy attitude, rolling her eyes when I asked if she needed anything or if she'd be back early. I stayed quiet, waiting until her car disappeared down the street. Once she was gone, I went straight to my laptop and pulled out the evidence I'd been collecting. I had screenshots of her texts, emails, and the receipts confirming the cash exchange with Jake. I'd also hidden a small voice recorder in the living room, just in case she decided to come back early or if I needed to catch her in the act. My hands were trembling, but I kept calm. I wanted to do this right. I sat on the couch, staring at the screen and just took a deep breath. I told myself I had to be rational, no matter how much I wanted to lose my shit. I was prepared for her to deny everything, to lie her way out of it just like she always did. But I wasn't going to let her get away with it this time. I had everything I needed, proof that she'd been sneaking around, lying, and spending money on someone else. About 15 minutes after she left, I heard the front door unlock. My heart jumped. She was back early. I quickly shut my laptop, grabbed my phone, and pretended to be watching TV. But I kept my ears open. Sure enough, I heard her footsteps coming in, followed by her usual loud, bitchy voice. She stomped into the living room, acting like she owned the place. "Hey," she said with that fake sweetness that I knew was just a mask. "What are you doing? Watching TV or something?" Her tone was dismissive, but I could see the little flicker of nervousness in her eyes. I looked up at her, trying to keep my voice steady. "Just relaxing. You're back early, everything." "Okay," I kept my tone neutral, but inside I was boiling. I had rehearsed what I'd say, and I was ready to blow her cover. She shrugged, tossing her gym bag onto the couch. "Yeah, just tired, long night, you know how it is." She tried to brush past me, but I blocked her path. I decided to confront her right then and there. I said calmly, "I know what you've been doing." Her face froze for a second, then she blinked rapidly, trying to act innocent. "What are you talking about?" she said, her voice a little higher than normal. "I have no idea what you mean." I pulled out the receipts, the screenshots, and the recordings I'd made. "This," I said, holding up the evidence, "says otherwise. You've been lying to me about where you've been, who you're with, and how much you're spending. I know about Jake, about the money, about the nights you've spent with him." Her eyes widened and she immediately started to lie, flipping her story faster than I could keep up. "No, that's not true. You're overreacting. You're jealous," she spat, her voice trembling with anger. "Jake's just a friend. You're crazy if you think I'd cheat on you." But I didn't buy it. I'd seen enough. I knew her game. She was a master at twisting things, but not this time. This time I had the proof, and I was done being played. Her reaction was classic: denial, anger, then tears. She started crying, claiming I was just insecure, that I didn't trust her, that I was ruining everything. But her tears didn't mean anything anymore. I felt a mixture of rage and heartbreak as I watched her lie and manipulate her way out of this. I had never felt so betrayed in my life. I told her I needed some space, that I couldn't look at her the same way anymore. She kept insisting she loved me, that it was all a mistake, that she'd stop seeing Jake. But I knew better. I knew this wasn't just a fling. It was a betrayal that cut deep. I couldn't just brush it off. I had to make a decision. I was angry, but I also felt a strange sense of clarity. I realized that I deserved better than being lied to and used for money and sex. That night I couldn't sleep. I kept replaying everything, trying to understand how I'd been so blind. I'd always thought we were solid, that we had a future, but her actions proved otherwise. I sat on the edge of the bed, staring at the ceiling, feeling the weight of her betrayal pressing down on me. I wondered how I was going to fix this, or if I even could. The one thing I knew for sure was that my trust was shattered, and I'd never be able to see her the same way again. The next morning was a blur of feelings I couldn't quite process. I woke up feeling numb, like I'd been hit by a freight train. My mind kept circling around the same thoughts. How long had she been lying? How many times had I been blind to the signs? The worst part was the realization that I'd trusted her, and she'd used that trust as a weapon. I kept asking myself why she did it, what was missing in our marriage that made her seek affection and validation elsewhere. Honestly, I don't think I'll ever fully understand her motives. I got up, made coffee, and tried to act normal, but inside I was burning with anger and sadness. I knew I had to face her again, but this time I wanted to be prepared. I decided I'd call her out directly and get some answers. I needed to know if she was truly sorry or just sorry she got caught. I also knew I had to think about what I wanted moving forward. I couldn't keep living in this gray area, not knowing if she'd do it again or if she'd even stop lying. While I was drinking my coffee, she finally texted me. It was a short message. "Can we talk?" I didn't reply right away. Instead, I took a deep breath and decided to give her a chance to explain herself, even though I already knew what she'd say. I wanted her to look me in the eyes and tell me the truth, no more lies. When she came into the room, her face was flushed and she looked like she'd been crying again. She sat down heavily on the couch, rubbing her hands nervously. "Look," she started, "I know you're upset. I didn't mean for it to happen. It just happened. I was feeling neglected and Jake was there and one thing led to another." Her voice was shaky, but her words sounded rehearsed. She was trying to justify everything like it was some kind of mistake she'd regret forever. I stared at her, my jaw clenched. "You think that's enough? That just happened. You lied to me for months. You lied about where you were, who you were with, and you spent thousands of dollars on this guy. How can you sit there and say it was a mistake? Did you even love me at all?" She looked away, tears forming again, but I wasn't buying the act anymore. I'd seen her true colors. She was manipulative, dishonest, and selfish. I felt a surge of anger. How could she be so callous? I wanted to shake her and scream, but I kept my composure. I knew I had to be smart. If I was going to do something about this, I needed a plan. I told her I needed some time to think, that I wasn't going to make any rash decisions. She begged me to forgive her, to give her another chance. She said she loved me, that she was sorry she hurt me, but I couldn't hear that anymore. Sorry didn't fix the fact that she'd been cheating on me, spending money behind my back and lying every step of the way. I felt a deep sense of betrayal, but also a strange relief. At least now, I knew the truth. Later that day, I started looking into what I could do next. I wasn't about to let her walk all over me or manipulate me into staying. I reached out to a lawyer about how to handle the finances, her spending, the house, everything. I all started making plans to move out if that's what I decided. I knew I couldn't stay in this marriage and pretend everything was okay. I had to face reality and decide what was best for me. The hardest part was realizing how much I'd invested emotionally and financially. I'd given her everything, my trust, my love, my money, and she'd thrown it all away for some guy named Jake. That thought made me sick. I kept thinking about the times she'd complain about money, about how I wasn't doing enough, yet she was out there spending my hard-earned cash on some other dude. The betrayal stung so deeply that I wondered if I'd ever be able to trust anyone again. But as the day wore on, I started to feel a little more clarity. I wasn't going to let her ruin me. I'd build myself back up, even if that meant starting over. I'd learned a hard lesson about trust and loyalty, and I'd never let someone manipulate me again. I knew I had to be strong for myself and for whatever future I could salvage. It was clear that wasn't the person I thought she was. She was a liar, a cheater, and someone I couldn't rely on anymore. And honestly, I didn't want to. The days that followed were a whirlwind of emotions and decisions. I spent hours on the phone with lawyers, trying to figure out the best way to protect myself financially and emotionally. I knew I couldn't just pack up and leave immediately, but I also couldn't keep pretending that everything was fine. Every time I looked at her, I saw the lies, the betrayal, and the woman I once thought I knew. It was like waking up from a nightmare I never wanted to face. She kept trying to reach out, begging me to forgive her, promising it was a mistake, that she loved me more than anything. She'd cry, plead, even throw in some false promises about changing, but nothing she said could undo what she'd done. I felt a strange mix of anger, disappointment, and a deep sadness that I'd never really felt before. How did it all come to this? How did I miss the signs? The woman I married, the woman I loved, was now a stranger hiding a secret life. I decided I needed to confront her one last time, not just with words but with some decisive action. I told her I was done playing her game. I'd gathered all the evidence, the receipts, the messages, the recordings, and I was ready to show her that I knew everything. I wanted her to see how much I'd uncovered, how deeply she'd betrayed me. I told her I was planning to leave, that I couldn't stay in a marriage built on lies. She begged me not to, said she'd do anything to fix it, but I wasn't convinced. I knew her pattern. She'd apologize, make promises, then go right back to her deceit. That evening I sat her down and laid everything out. I showed her the screenshots, the receipts, the recordings. Her face turned pale as she realized I wasn't bluffing. I watched her try to spin some story claiming she was lonely, that Jake was just a distraction, that she'd been stupid but loved me. I cut her off. You lied to me for months. You spent thousands of dollars on this guy. You sneaked around behind my back and now you want me to forgive you. Sorry. That's not how it works. She started crying again, but this time there was a different kind of desperation in her eyes. It was the kind of look that told me she knew she'd lost control. I felt a strange sense of relief. Finally, the truth was out and I didn't have to wonder anymore. I told her I was done, that I was going to move out and start fresh. I knew it wouldn't be easy, but staying with someone who lied so blatantly was worse. The next few days were a mess. I packed my things, hired a lawyer, and started looking for a new place. Kept calling, texting, showing up at the door, trying to guilt-trip me into staying. She even accused me of overreacting, of not loving her anymore. But I knew better. Love isn't supposed to hurt like this. Love isn't supposed to involve lies, betrayal, and cheating. I felt betrayed, angry, and hurt, but I also felt a strange sense of liberation. I moved out into a small apartment nearby and started to rebuild. I cut all ties with her, blocked her number, and refused to let her manipulate me anymore. I realized I'd been giving her too much power, too much trust that she didn't deserve. Honestly, I felt like a fool. How could I have been so blind? But I also knew I had to focus on myself now. I had to heal both emotionally and financially. The funny thing is, the more I distanced myself from her, the clearer my mind became. I started to see what really mattered, my own happiness, my peace of mind. I realized that I'd been so caught up in trying to fix the marriage that I'd ignored my own needs. Now, I was finally free from her lies, but I also knew I'd carry the scars of this betrayal for a long time. Trust is hard to rebuild after someone you love so deeply turns out to be so deceitful. Looking back, I learned a lot. I learned that sometimes the truth has to come out painfully, but it's better than living in a lie. I learned that I shouldn't ignore the signs, no matter how small they seem. And most importantly, I learned that I deserve honesty, loyalty, and respect, things never really gave me. Moving forward, I'm trying to focus on myself, on healing, and on making sure I never let anyone take advantage of me like that again. This whole experience has been a wake-up call. I don't regret discovering the truth, even if it hurt like hell. I just wish I'd seen the signs sooner. If anyone else is going through something similar, my advice is this: trust your instincts, gather your evidence, and don't be afraid to walk away. You deserve better. Sometimes, the only way to find peace is to let go of what's broken and start over. It's been a few weeks since I moved out, and honestly, I feel like I'm just now starting to breathe again. The initial shock and anger have mellowed into a strange kind of clarity, but that doesn't mean I don't wake up some mornings feeling hollow or angry at myself for not seeing it sooner. Still, I keep telling myself that I'm better off without her. I've been focusing on myself, going to the gym, catching up with old friends, and trying to rebuild some sense of normalcy. But the truth is, I can't shake the feeling of betrayal that still lingers deep in my chest. It's like a scar I can't see but always feel. One thing I've realized is how much her lies affected my perception of everything: my trust in people, my confidence, even my sense of security. I kept asking myself how I didn't see all the signs, how I missed the warning flags. I was so focused on keeping everything together, on making the marriage work, that I ignored the small, nagging doubts. Now I see that those doubts were there for a reason. I just didn't want to face them. I was so eager to believe in the fairy tale that I ignored the reality staring me right in the face. Financially, I had to do some serious damage control. I found out that had been draining our savings, using our joint account for her secret meetings, her shopping sprees, and her payments to Jake. I had to hire a lawyer to help me get access to all our accounts, and I started transferring my money into a separate account I opened in my name only. It was a harsh lesson. Never trust someone blindly, especially when they're manipulative and dishonest. I also learned that I need to be more careful about my finances and keep a closer eye on my money. It's not just about protecting myself now, but about making sure I don't get again. The emotional toll has been the hardest part. I won't lie. There are moments when I feel angry, bitter, or even hopeless. I catch myself replaying everything, wishing I could undo the past. But I also know I need to forgive myself for trusting her so blindly. That's part of healing. I've started seeing a therapist, which has helped me process everything more clearly. Talking about it out loud, unpacking all the feelings, has been a huge relief. I've come to accept that I can't change what happened, but I can control how I move forward. One thing I've realized is that life goes on, even after betrayal like this. I've started dating again, nothing serious yet, just some casual meetups. It's weird, honestly. I haven't dated in years, and now I'm figuring out what I want from someone new. I don't trust easily anymore, but I also know I don't want to close myself off completely. I just want someone who's honest, loyal, and respectful, someone who won't make me question everything I thought I knew about love. Looking back, I see how much I've grown from this experience, even if it doesn't feel like it right now. I've learned not to ignore the small signs, to trust my gut, and to value myself more. I know now that I don't need someone who manipulates or lies to me. I deserve genuine love and respect. It's a painful lesson, but one I think I needed to learn. I don't regret discovering the truth because it set me free. I just wish it hadn't come at such a high cost. If there's one thing I'd tell anyone going through something similar, it's this: don't ignore your instincts. Trust is fragile, and once it's broken, it's almost impossible to repair. Gather your evidence, stay calm, and don't be afraid to walk away if you have to. You're worth more than being lied to or used. It's going to hurt. It's going to take time. But eventually, you'll find your footing again. You'll rebuild your life, even if it means starting over from scratch. And when you do, you'll realize that you're stronger than you ever thought possible. Now, sitting here reflecting on everything, I realize how much I've changed, and how much I still have to go through. The betrayal cut so deep that it felt like my heart was shattered into pieces, but somehow, I managed to pick up those pieces and start putting myself back together. I learned that trust isn't something you give blindly. It's something fragile that must be earned and maintained. Actions showed me what happens when that trust is broken, and honestly, I'm glad I found out before I committed even more to a lie. What's most important now is that I've learned to value myself more. I won't tolerate being lied to, used, or manipulated. I've become more cautious about who I let into my life and how much I trust. I know that real love isn't about secrets or lies. It's about honesty, loyalty, and respect. And if someone can't give me that, then I'm better off alone than in a relationship built on deception. I've also come to see that sometimes the most painful experiences teach us the most valuable lessons. I used to think I was invincible, that I could handle anything, but betrayal makes you realize how vulnerable you really are. Still, that vulnerability isn't a weakness. It's a sign of strength to face the truth, learn from it, and move forward. I've started focusing on my personal growth, my career, and my happiness. I've realized that I don't need someone to complete me. I need to be complete myself. Looking back, I wish I'd trusted my instincts more. I wish I'd seen the warning signs and acted sooner. But at the same time, I know I can't change the past. All I can do is decide how I move forward. For now, that means keeping my distance from, protecting my heart, and making sure I never let anyone manipulate me like that again. I've learned that sometimes the only way to truly heal is to let go of what's broken and focus on what I can control, my own happiness and well-being. So I want anyone reading this to know, if you're going through something similar, don't lose hope. Betrayal hurts, but it also opens the door to a better future. Trust your gut, gather your evidence, and don't be afraid to walk away when someone proves they're not worth your trust. You're stronger than you think, and you deserve someone who values you for who you are, not for what they can get out of you. This experience has been brutal, but it's also been a wake-up call. I now see my worth more clearly, and I refuse to settle for less. Life is too short to be with someone who doesn't respect you or who cheats behind your back. I'm moving forward, one step at a time, and I know that eventually I'll find happiness again. Because at the end of the day, the only person who truly matters is me, and I'll make sure I never forget that.